Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. How you doing today, my friend?
I am doing pretty well for myself.
On this episode, it should not be a long one. There's not too much Bulls. The Blackhawks have been off all week. We'll be talking about whether or not the earth is flat and a little bit of NFL draft. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the Stars of Tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. So head on over to icehogs.com, get yourself some tickets, jersey, hat, shirt, more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. So, I need to lead with this one. So I think you are as frustrated as I am. Is if you're in a bubble and you haven't been out listening to sports or you don't follow basketball, the Cleveland Cavaliers have a podcast, and point guard Kyrie Irving was on there, and he says he knows that people have told him the Earth is round, but he doesn't believe it. And to make matters worse, is somebody in an interview asked Draymond Green about this, and he said, I don't know, it's not crazy. I haven't done enough research to be able to say either way. What?
Yeah, I really didn't think that there were still discussions today about the Earth being flat. I mean, I know there's kind of not really a cult group, but a group of people who still believe that it is a conspiracy that the Earth is indeed flat. But I never expected, like, a star athlete or any sort of big name in media or sports or anything like that to come out and try to argue that the Earth is flat.
I could be wrong on this one, but I believe Kyrie Irving went to Duke, right?
Yes, he did.
Isn't that's a pretty good academic institution? Don't they tell you that the Earth is round there?
Well, even if you can get into Duke, don't you think you've discussed the Earth's roundness in high school or elementary school? I mean, obviously he had to get there, so the whole thing is just kind of crazy.
I mean, let's hypothetically say, for the sake of argument, is we're discussing the flatness of the Earth. Where does the Earth end? Isn't there, if it's flat, isn't there at some point where you fall off of it?
Right.
I'm just so mind-boggled by this. I don't have enough words. And then Draymond Green, as part of his argument, went, well, I can take a picture with my iPhone and make it look round. Well, yes, that's exactly what happened. Is some engineer is working on all these tweaks and updates for the iPhone, and he's like, yes, somebody finally gets it. The new iPhone is a tool to show the world that it's really flat.
I just don't understand how, even if the Earth was flat, how it could possibly be covered up so well in some conspiracy when there's no actual photos of a flat Earth. There's concept art of a flat Earth, and basically what this flat Earth concept, if you want to call it that, looks like. It's basically a large oval, and the continents are all in the same order, but like you'd see in an atlas, but slightly like in a curved like configuration, and the sky is basically like a big bubble over this. Think of it as you have like a coffee cup. Of course, it's more of an oval shape, and you have kind of that plastic dome over it, and the coffee or whatever liquid is inside the cup is level with that plastic like cover over it. That's how these people envision the Earth, and the sun goes around it like it's almost like saying, it's almost like believing the sun rotates around the Earth. When you think about it.
You know what is, I don't know if you've ever seen like the old drawings where the Earth is sitting on, it's flat and it's sitting on top of a bunch of elephants on top of a turtle.
Yeah.
I wonder if they believe all of that too, that there's a giant space turtle with the Earth on him.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, you can't really like use it as a religious argument because major religions around the world acknowledge the fact that the Earth is indeed round. I mean, you can look at some ancient texts and ancient like findings that are, have to do with either religion or not religion in some ancient, belief systems. And even they kind of came up with the idea that the Earth is round. I could understand why people 500 some years ago believed the Earth was flat. We didn't go into space. We didn't really, look at a lot of things. But a lot of astronomers from ancient times, like going back to, some of the ancient Greek philosophers, they all envisioned this round Earth, and they've started to discover that we rotate around the sun. The sun doesn't rotate around us hundreds and hundreds of years ago. So if these ancient philosophers could have seen this, then it's so weird. I almost chuckled at it. I'm like, is this an Onion article? But no, it's not.
At first I thought he was joking around, like he was trying to be funny, and then I listened to more. I was like, he's not joking. He's being serious. Like he really believes this stuff.
Right. And part of me thought, or maybe still might think, even though he sounds pretty serious, he looking for just kind of a media stir or some sort of weird attention by saying stuff like that. But why would you go out of your way to make yourself look extremely stupid by saying that when you know it's not true? So it really, the more and more I see it, the more I truly believe he thinks the Earth is flat.
Yeah, and I can't help him. I really can't.
Take him on a plane. Take him on a plane and have him fly all the way around the world. Because obviously you can't do that with a flat Earth because you'll hit the end. How do people fly around the world if the Earth is flat?
I don't know. I don't even know what to say.
And like, how would the laws of gravity apply? We're all pulled in by the laws of gravity towards the center of the round Earth. Now, obviously, you're standing on a flat platform, but that would obviously interfere with other laws of gravity as well. I mean, it's kind of funny how here we are on a sports show talking about gravity and the ways of the Earth, but, Kyrie Irving, you gave us a reason to talk about that.
Yeah, it's. I mean, normally I get it. Is like you are a professional athlete, and I'm a scientist by training, and I hope nobody judges me by my basketball abilities, and vice versa. Because I'm not judging them until they do something ridiculous. Like if I miss a 3-pointer pretty bad, can't make fun of me. But if I go to do a layup and I trip and smash myself in the face with a basketball, you can laugh at me at that point. It's at some point where the thing you're doing that's not your profession and you're so bad at it, you can laugh at it. And that's where Kyrie has gone is, if Kyrie wants to, I don't know, believe some weird stuff just because he's not educated in the facts of things. But when you go off the deep end like that is, and start talking about how the Earth is flat, then we retain the right to ridicule you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's absolutely no logical reason to think that, really. I mean, think about the moon, think about eclipses, and think about the way the moon is shadowed. That's all because of the round Earth and its alignment to the sun. And I'm going to bring up the ancient texts back again because you have the original Christian church from around 2,000 years ago when they started bringing up the calendar. They used astronomical observations to determine their calendar and like the celebration of Easter and whatnot. So them without, advanced telescopes or going into space, even they could see why the Earth was round. Why would there be a conspiracy to hide a flat Earth? If the Earth truly was flat, why would that be such a thing to hide? I could just go on so many tangents of why that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's just mind-boggling to me.
It's funny.
It's something to laugh about. It took away, and it's funny because if this would have happened during Super Bowl week, probably gets lost in the shuffle. Right. But it happens in a really slow sports week, and it just catapults everywhere. And that's why we're probably gonna have a short show today. There's not much to talk about. The Blackhawks were off all week. The Bulls are in All-Star weekend.
Don't really want to talk about them anymore anyway.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about them anyway. The only thing I'm going to mention is that the game against Boston is Jimmy Butler got a Michael Jordan type call at the end of that game.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about that.
Yeah, and I get it, is that the NBA officiating, we talked about this before, NBA officiating is terrible. It is far and away the worst of the major sports. And this was case in point. I mean, I'm a Bulls fan. The Bulls had no reason to get that call. It was so bad. But we'll take it. I mean, the thing is everyone's getting upset. But in the end, it sort of washes out because the Bulls lost one against I believe it was the Wizards, where it was on a bad call. And in the end, it sort of evens out in the wash. But who knows?
I don't know. I want this team to keep tanking. I don't want them to win any games. I just kind of want them to keep losing at this point.
Yeah, I mean, there's talking about the trade deadline's coming up in a couple days. It's on the 23rd. Today's the 18th. So in less than a week, we have the trade deadline, and people are talking about Taj getting traded, and Robin Lopez getting traded, and Doug McDermott getting traded. What are you going to get for any of these guys?
Robin Lopez might bring you a little something, but for Doug McDermott, nothing.
Yeah, you're not going to. And Taj is a fairly valuable piece, but he's a free agent at the end of the season, so it's who's going to give up something.
Right, a rental player, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, at best is maybe Robin Lopez, you get a really late first round pick, and same with Taj at best, and that's best case scenario. But what do you get from drafting in that late in the draft?
Not much.
You traded up to get Doug McDermott, so there's not a lot to be had. The only thing of value, the only real question here is, do you trade Jimmy Butler or not? If you trade Jimmy Butler, I know Boston is hot and heavy trying to get him, is possibly you could get the Nets. The Boston owns the Nets #1 pick this year, and that could end up being the #1 overall pick. Do you work out a trade where you get that pick plus some other stuff and try to just completely rebuild from scratch? Or do you try to build around Jimmy? That's the only real question you have to answer.
Right. Now, here's the funny thing, and tell me if you see the same thing, because I'm pretty sure you'll say yes. Here's how a typical Bulls trade deadline headline or multiple headlines down the last month till the deadline will go. They're interested in X player. They're interested in X player again. They're still interested in X player. Oh, it didn't happen. Let's see. They've been interested in Cousins for what, the past 2 years every year? Nothing. They've been interested in trading Taj Gibson the past few years. That hasn't happened. They've wanted, Okafor? They've wanted to do that, and that kind of completely fell apart. Every trade deadline with the Bulls, it ends up being they want to make some big splash. They're looking to make some big move, and then it ends up being, oh, we'll dump off like an aging veteran in Kirk Heinrich who plays like 4 minutes a game for like a 5th round pick. That seems how it typically goes with the Bulls at the deadline.
That's because they have bad front office management.
Well, yeah. But you get that pattern. Like, you've seen that pattern, right?
Yeah,
it happens every year.
It's they can't pull the trigger, and part of it is they're scared to pull the trigger. Is the Bulls are, they made the trade when they got or they traded Aldridge for, I forgot who they got for him, and it ended up being it was bad for the Bulls. But the thing is they identified a trait. It was Tyrese Thomas for LaMarcus Aldridge, and they did it on draft night, and it was, I get it. Like, at least they had a plan in place. They said, listen, we're going to go with the more athletic guy who has the higher upside, and it just turned out he couldn't play in the NBA where Aldridge was successful. I mean, but at least they identified this trait that they wanted. They wanted to be younger. They wanted to be athletic, and they went that direction. And since then, they're just so gun shy about making like splashes, unless it's ones they have to, that they shoot themselves in the foot. Is the worst trade you can make is the one that you're too scared to pull the trigger on. I mean, it's you have to be confident when you make trades. You have to say, listen, we know exactly what it is we want. We know exactly what we're willing to give up, and you go to the table with that. Is you have to give somebody up to get somebody. Nobody's going to give you a player unless it's dumping salary. So the Bulls front office is just they're just gun shy.
Which is why this whole thing is, like, when you repeatedly say like those kind of things, every year that these big targets or trade needs or wants, when you hear the headlines, you say, yeah, it's going to be all talk. It's not actually going to happen. It's a yearly occurrence.
I'm sorry, I was on mute.
That doesn't help.
No. I don't even remember what I was saying. But this team is pathetic, and I'm sick of the Bulls.
So am I. Let's move on, shall we?
Yeah. Let's see. Blackhawks. I got a question on Twitter that was why Caro, Schmaltz, and Forsling were sent down, and some other people may have questions about that too. The reason is they were off all this week. Those guys it's a bye week. They weren't even allowed to practice until 4 o'clock yesterday. So the Blackhawks, those guys had basically the equivalent of an option, so they could send them down to the AHL. They could play for Rockford all week and still get practice in as young guys, and they don't count towards the salary cap for that week. So basically, it saves the Blackhawks a bunch of money.
It was the smartest move you could think. You keep the youngins fresh, and you save a little bit of money. It was the right thing to do. I wasn't surprised when it happened. I thought, okay, they're getting sent down. They'll get some playing time in Rockford during this bye week that the players don't really seem to like. But, pretty simple reasons, smart moves, and, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, what's your opinion on this bye week thing?
I just think it's just weird to me. I don't know. It's hard for me to say from someone who's not a player, because I'm pretty sure different players feel different things. I feel like from what I've heard, a lot of players don't like having an entire week off because it throws everything off, and I think some coaches feel the same way. As a fan, I don't like it because, a whole week without hockey, that kind of sucks. And I understand why some people don't like it because of the timing. Like, I know some people have their bye week really early in the season. It's like, okay, we're not really overly exhausted yet because the season just started. So, I don't know. I think it's just kind of odd to me. But it's hard for me to give a strong opinion on it, considering I'm not a player or a coach. But that's how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, as a fan, it's sort of sucks just because they condense the schedule down because they have the same number of games in the same time period. They start this time, they end this time. That doesn't expand, and they just take a week off. So that means they're playing more games in a shorter period. And I like the little bit of more spaced out in the games. Gives you a chance to, hockey's not that long of a commitment as compared to like baseball, but still, if you have like 4 games in a week instead of 3, it makes it just a little harder to keep the ratings up. When you're playing less often, it gives people, the hockey season is a long season. It gives people a little more something to look forward to and time to digest the game. And also, like you were saying, is there was teams that got the bye early and it really sucked. And for the Blackhawks, they got a bye coming off of a road trip where they took 10 out of possible 12 points.
Yeah, and there was multiple arguments about that whole thing. Some people are saying, oh, it's a good, nice rest after that, which I could also see. And some people are saying that it's a momentum killer, which, I don't know. I do question that one a little more. Sometimes I think the whole momentum thing in sports is kind of overrated. But at the same time, when you got a roll and things are clicking, some players and coaches might not want to be off for a week then. I can see the arguments of both sides with that whole thing.
Yeah, I don't buy into the momentum type thing, but I can buy into the rhythm. So if you're playing with a line and everything's clicking and you're on the you're on the same page with everybody and everything is moving like a well-oiled machine, you start scoring more points. But when you herky jerky it with time off here, or if somebody gets injured or you shake up a line, it takes a while to readjust. And the Blackhawks were on fire. It was 23 goals in 5 games, and I don't know, right just a minute ago I checked and it was 0-0 going into this game against a team that they beat last Saturday 5-1.
Well, they're down 1-0 now.
Oh.
A really garbage goal. It was like shot from behind the net. It somehow bounced off the edge of the skate of Crawford, went straight up and hit the top of the net and went in. That's where the Hawks hit 2 posts in the first period. I don't know if you were watching the first period.
No, that was my dad's been in the hospital, so I've been going up there and visiting him, so I have it recorded. I'll watch it tonight.
Gotcha. Yeah, they dominated that first period, but nothing went in.
Yeah, and so it's they played them a week ago today, and it's 5-1 on the road, and the Blackhawks scored 23 goals in 5 games, and now they haven't scored in this game. So it's was it the week bye? I don't know, but it doesn't. I'm sure in the Blackhawks players' minds, it has something to do with it.
Yeah, and the thing is, these Blackhawks players, at least a good chunk of them, have dealt with this kind of thing before with, like, the Olympics. Because some players who weren't in the Olympics for the Hawks have had all that time off. And then you also have, like, the All-Star break. So it's nothing really new to have a chunk of time off. I think just for a lot of teams, it's the timing of it. Because with the Olympics, they're used to kind of the time it is every, few years that they have it. And with the All-Star break, it's obviously the same time every year. So, maybe some of these teams and their kind of biological set schedules in their mind are just thrown off a little bit with these bye weeks. So, there's probably some multiple tangents you could go on about that.
Yeah, but last Saturday's game against Edmonton, that possibly was the best game the Blackhawks played as a whole team this whole season.
Yeah, that was a great game. Absolutely great game.
All four lines played well. Goaltending was good. It was just an all-around good game.
Yeah, and everything was well balanced, like you said. There were some games where the Hawks won big, but against like the Avalanche or really bad teams, while this Edmonton team has been rejuvenated and are much, much better than they have been in years past, and playing in a very tough environment up there against the Oilers in Edmonton. It's a good win to have. And, I'm going to go back to the bye week. Some people would argue that a win like that is kind of frustrating because then they had to go on this bye week when they were, quote, riding high.
Yeah, and it's so we'll just see going forward. I mean, there's still half of a hockey game left to play in this game. What are they, about halfway through the second?
Yep, and they got to go to Buffalo tomorrow.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll see. You can't judge it on one game. You'll see, over the course of a week or so, several games, what the tempo of the team looks like, how they're playing together, and that's really gonna be the telling point of whether this week off was a hindrance or not.
Right, and especially since this game, the way it started, the way the Hawks looked. Like, they were playing well, they just didn't score because, the puck doesn't always bounce your way. I mean, like I said, 2 wicked shots from one, I think, from Panarin, and I can't remember who had the other one, but they were just beautiful shots that both rang off inside the post and out. So, you had a few bad breaks, and, the second period they're not playing quite as crisp, but, I expected them to look a little slower than they do. Let's just say that, with a whole week off.
Yeah, so I don't know. Well, time will tell. I mean, there's not a lot to talk about. It's just really been a quiet week. Let's see. Cubs. Not too much Cub news. Travis Wood is now a Royal. I was really hoping.
Starting up.
Yeah, spring training starting up, and I don't know if you saw the Chris Bryant prank video.
I did, with Greg Maddox.
Yeah, so if you guys haven't seen this, check it out. I'll post the link on the website. But was it Red Bull that did it?
Yes, because
Okay.
I believe he's sponsored by Red Bull, or they got some sort of sponsorship connection. Chris Bryant and him and Red Bull.
Yeah, so they said that they wanted to come and videotape him doing batting practice in his home in Las Vegas, and so they're filming him, and they put Greg Maddox in like a fake beard and fake hair, and pretended he's the sound guy, and he's making all these comments that are just really awkward, and then finally the guy who's throwing batting practice is like, I gotta go, and the guy who's directing is going, oh, well, we need at least 10 more pitches. And Greg Maddox, who's pretending to be the sound guy, is like, I can throw. Chris Bryant's like, I don't know. And he goes up there and starts throwing curveballs and then going, that's a strike. And Chris Bryant turns, this guy's got a pretty good arm. And he takes it off. Or he's like, can I get that bat? He's like, can you sign that to Greg Maddox? I was like, this is awesome. That was a good prank.
Yeah, and it was really kind of funny to see how here's Greg Maddox, who's much older, much heavier than he once was, and he's having the NL MVP off balance on a number of pitches. Like,
Yeah.
It's almost like he still got it somewhat.
My favorite part is he based on his pitch, he was telling Bryant where he was going to hit it. I was like,
Yeah, exactly.
That's insane. But it was I saw like stills of it before I saw the whole video, And I was like, oh, that's funny. They put him in a fat suit, too. I was like, no, Greg Maddox just got fat.
You know, what's really funny about Greg Maddox, he never looked like an athlete. If you saw him on the street, you wouldn't know it was him. He was the most average Joe looking guy who happened to be one of the best pitchers ever and won, 17 gold gloves? Like a first sure Hall of Famer? Like, it's just funny. He never really looked like an athlete.
No, even at the end of that video, is him standing next to Chris Bryant, is just the sheer size difference. Like, I know Chris Bryant is just starting in his career, he's not even in his prime yet, but Greg Maddox is so much littler than he is, and just looks like not an athlete. He just looks like a guy who won a contest to pitch an inning.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, the guy, it was just that pinpoint accuracy. You know, if you can paint the corners and keep everybody off balance, that's, you know, you already have the advantage of being a pitcher.
Yep.
It just proved that you don't need a 105 mile an hour fastball to be dominant.
Exactly. I mean, it's all about location and movement in so many scenarios. And you know what's so funny also about Greg Maddox? When he first came into the league, I've seen the pictures, I've seen the video. He was like ungodly skinny. Like ungodly skinny.
Yeah. I mean, he was just a little guy. Just a tiny little frame.
And look what he did. It's really quite amazing. His glove, his fielding, all those gold gloves, it was like he was doing athletic things with that body, whether it was early on skinny or average Joe, late 30s looking guy on the mound. He was doing so many athletic things and was making history with so many baseball stats.
Yeah, I mean, just absolutely phenomenal pitcher, and it sucked that he left the Cubs over, you know, a little bit of money, but you know, he's just a phenomenal pitcher, and I'm glad he got to at least come back for a hot second to the Cubs.
Yeah, you know, here's my question about that. Since it was technically before I was born in 94, I believe his last year with the Cubs was, 91 or 92. From the stories I've heard, and I'm kind of looking at you to verify this, it didn't seem like the Cubs made a huge effort to bring him back. Like, they didn't really they didn't make a huge effort to make him an offer he couldn't refuse. They just kind of met it. Is that true or not?
I mean, I was junior high age when that happened, and from what I understood, it was basically over $1 million over 4 years was the difference.
Okay.
So $250,000 a year that separated you from one of the best pitchers ever.
Yeah.
I
who
mean,
knows where they could have gone with Greg Maddox if he would have stayed.
Yeah, I mean, and what's hilarious is look at the guy's stats. Is he pitched 23 seasons in baseball, and he has less than 1,000. He gave up less than 1,000 walks.
Yeah, that's incredible. And for a guy who had, you know, the stuff that you'd look for weak contact with, painting the corners and whatnot, he still had over 3,000 strikeouts.
Yeah. Yep, he had 3,371 strikeouts.
And he got his 3,000th with the Cubs in 2005.
And once he hit with the Braves, the most walks he ever gave up in one season with the Braves was 52 walks in a whole season.
That's ridiculous.
Oh,
That's
sorry.
just-
With 52. 52 walks is the most he gave up. So with his time in the Braves, 52 his first year, 31, 23, 28, 20, 45, 37, 42, 27, 45, 33, and then he came back to the Cubs. So
That's
50.
ridiculous.
whole season where he gave up 50 walks, and that was high. That was his high.
That's incredible. Like, that's mind-boggling to even think about.
Yeah, I mean, in 97, he went 19. He had 19 wins and 20 walks. Just he basically averaged 1 walk per win.
That's mind-boggling. There was also a really cool thing posted on YouTube. It's against the Cubs, but it's still fun to watch. Greg Maddox with a complete game where he only threw like 78, 79 pitches. Like, think about that.
Yeah, I mean, it just still boggles my mind. He had 34 starts that season, and he had 20 walks.
How is that possible? Like, that defies baseball.
Yeah, I'm looking quick. So he had, let's see, that season he had 33 games started that season. He had 57 earned runs and gave up 9 home runs, 20 walks.
9 home runs total.
177 strikeouts and 6 hit by pitches.
Like, this almost sounds like a creative player on, like, MLB The Show or, like, old MVP 05 or something.
And he pitched 232 innings. It's not like he was doing 5-inning starts. He pitched 232 innings.
Yeah, I mean, what's the average for a start? I mean, usually when you're a starter, it's like, you're like, wow, he was able to get to 200 innings. You know, that's pretty good, but wow.
Yeah, in his career, his first season he only had 6 games started, but starting his second full season, he had less than 200 innings. In 2006, then those last few years he didn't, but he was, I mean, one year he had 268 innings pitched. 268 innings.
And what year was that?
92.
90. Was that his first year with the Braves or his last year with the Cubs?
That was last year with the Cubs.
Okay, so it was after the 92 season he left.
Yeah, and the 93 season he had 267 innings, only 1 inning less. And he basically just identical numbers. Is both 20 wins, a 2.18 versus 2.36 ERA, 1 inning difference, 27 hits difference, 5 earned runs difference, and 18 less walks. He went from 70 to 52. So it was just the model of consistency.
Now, could you imagine being a batter or like some sort of, like, just like as an offensive unit facing Greg Maddox? Could you imagine how frustrating it is to not hit that guy at all when he's not even throwing 90 miles an hour? I mean, doesn't that seem just so unbelievably frustrating?
It's just, I mean, when you get movement on that ball and it's the movement where it's supposed to go. I mean, the reason a lot of these pitchers get hit is they either aren't varying things up and you get a good timing, the rhythm down with it, or they miss a pitch. And Greg Maddox just didn't miss pitches, and he threw guys. He was just so smart, so cerebral about it. Is he knew how to keep you off balance, and there was never a moment where any hitter was standing up that plate going, I'm going to sit on this pitch because this is what I think is coming. Because if you did that, you were going to look stupid because he was going to throw it exactly the opposite of where you thought it was, and you're just going to have a big cut and miss. And it's not like you can stand up there. And like another thing too is he was so perfect at painting the corners. I mean, if you walk one guy every 10 innings, so you're averaging less than 1 walk a game. They have to protect the corners. So if it looks like it's is right on the edge, you're like, crap, I got to swing at this. And it really keeps guys off. It makes the strike zone bigger because they're swinging at things.
Right. And you know what the other really impressive thing about this is? He was doing this during the steroid era.
Yeah. It's amazing. But, I mean, guys like him, I don't know if there's ever going to be another guy like him. I mean, Kyle Hendricks is similar, but I can't, and he's really good. I just can't imagine anybody being the level that Greg Maddox was able to do that for 20-some seasons.
Right, there'll be Greg Maddox-like players. There'll be ones that come, close to comparison, but there will never be another Greg Maddox. There's not going to be a guy who walks that little for over 20 years. Over 20 years in the big leagues. There'll be some close. Like if Kyle Hendricks keeps doing what he's doing, he's going to be very comparable to Greg Maddox, and he already has been. But it's not going to reach Greg Maddox himself. And I love Kyle Hendricks, but Greg Maddox was in a whole other universe of baseball stardom.
Yeah, man, I love Greg Maddox. I still have a Greg Maddox jersey from, when I was younger, and I've gotten a little too. I'm a little too. Mine wasn't a throwback because it was like the one from when he played. So it was.
Yes.
I've gotten a little heavy, so it doesn't quite button as nice as it's supposed to. So I've got to lose a couple of lbs to fit back into it. But I love Greg Maddox.
Yeah, the one I have is a throwback home pullover 80s jersey, and I got it during the 100th anniversary of Wrigley Field as a gift. So that's the one I wanted, and I love wearing that jersey.
Yeah, he was such a great player. It's like one of those timeless ones that you, no matter what era it is, what year it is, you can wear a Greg Maddox jersey. It doesn't matter that he left and went to the Braves. Yeah, he was like the prodigal son. He returned for a couple seasons, and in my eyes, he's always going to be a Cub. I'm always going to picture him in a Cubs jersey.
Yeah, and it was really kind of awkward because 2 times in the Cubs' history they faced Greg Maddox in the playoffs, and one time they beat him. If you remember, in 2003 when Mark Pryor beat Greg Maddox in the playoffs.
So when Mark Pryor was good.
Yeah, that was at the top of his game. Was that year 2003?
But yeah, I mean, we briefly said this for a minute, but also Travis Wood is no longer a Cub, and I'm sad about it just because who's going to walk around with no shirt on?
Yeah, or in the outfield.
Yeah, and it's weird. I just pictured him that he was going to go to a National League team because he's such a good hitter and he likes hitting.
Right.
He's not going to have that opportunity.
The Padres were a perfect fit for him.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand is he wanted the opportunity to be able to start, and
sure,
due to sad circumstances, the Braves have an opening. So he's going to have the opportunity there for. I mean, the only thing I could see with the Royals over the Padres is the Royals are still contenders.
True.
The Padres are not.
No.
And who knows if what happens with that team? And California San Diego's a lovely place. I go there every summer, but it's not a great team right now.
No, and it hasn't been for a few years now.
Yeah, and I hope the Cubs don't miss Travis Wood's abilities on the field because they could have had him. I really think that they could have made the last push to sign him. Hopefully that they're confident enough in the arms that they have in the bullpen still to be able to bridge the gap to Wade Davis.
I'm not too worried about them. The only thing I am a little worried about is, like for right now we have Mike Montgomery, but it would be nice to have a little bit more lefty in the bullpen because we got a lot of righties.
Yeah, a lot of righties. And, I love C.J. Edwards. Carl Edwards Jr. But I think he's going to be a very good player. He showed flashes of it last year, but again, righty. Wade Davis, righty. You got a lot of right-handed arms in that bullpen.
Strop, Rondon, righties.
Yep. That's my big concern is who's going to be that tough lefty that you bring in.
Right now it's Mike Montgomery, but if they want to start him, then what do you got?
Not much.
Zach Ross Cup is even still with the organization. I mean,
yeah. I don't know what they do. I mean, we'll see. The position players report tomorrow. Monday?
I think they already reported.
Did they already report? Okay, I thought it was just pitchers and catchers so far. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I got a question for you about the Cubs. Where do you put them right now in terms of wins? Because right now, when spring training starts, this is the time of year when the discussion about who's going to get so many wins begins. What do you think is going to be their win total this year?
I don't think they'll get as many as last year. I would say probably 96, 97.
I'm going with 98 right now. Yeah, as good as they are, and I think they're just as good as last year, 100 wins plus is really tough to do. Now, which is kind of funny because I say that, and I also look at the rest of the National League, and there's really not a lot that I think overly scares me. I mean, the main points that I think are notable in the National League is the Mets pitching if it stays healthy, and that's a big if. I think the Nationals on paper are the biggest threat to the Cubs, but I don't put them equal or above the Cubs. I know the Dodgers are good, but there's something about them that doesn't really sell me as a team to make a deep playoff run. I don't think the Giants are going to be as good as they have been. And you know what? I'm going to say this with full confidence right now. Watch me eat my words. The Cardinals don't scare me anymore. They just don't.
No, I'm hearing articles where that they could be below 500 this coming season.
Yeah, I've seen those same articles too. Right now, I see them being slightly above 500. I see them as kind of what they were last year, mid-80s. Late upper 80s at the most. I don't see them winning 90 or more games, especially losing Alex Reyes. That was huge, a huge blow, because the rest of that pitching staff is, for the most part, old, lately injured, and just past their prime.
Yeah, and the Cubs part of what they have going for them is, they can take their foot off the gas, I think, this coming year, because who in this division is going to chase them? They don't need to get 100 wins. They can take their foot off the gas. They can start resting guys. They can do that 6-man rotation so guys are fresh in the playoffs. The Brewers are building something, but they're not there. I thought the Pirates would be a contender for the next few years, but we saw last year they just weren't very good.
It's not looking like it now.
The Cardinals, unless they pull out some Cardinals magic, they don't look like they have it. So I don't know who in that division is going to be the threat to the Cubs. And if they end up running away with it, then what's their motivation to go out and win all these games? They can just take their foot off the gas and coast to the finish.
Right, exactly. I think when it comes to the division, even though I'm not high on the Cardinals, I still think they're technically the biggest threat, considering they still do have some talent on that team. But, the Pirates are a mess right now. The Brewers are going to be that pesky, annoying team. They're not going to make a run at the playoffs, but they're going to annoy you. And pesky, I don't know if that's pesky is not really a term, but you know what I mean when they play you. I think the Reds might be the worst team in baseball right now, to be completely honest. So, yeah, the division is not what it was 2 years ago when you had the Cardinals and Pirates both winning 100 games or like close to 100 games. So, you look at the Cardinals and you say this. Their pitching is not what it used to be. Their defense is not good. They do not have a good defense. Their bullpen is nothing to brag about. What they do have going for them, they have some solid bats. Yadier Molina doesn't hit for power anymore, but he's
Yadier Molina has got some nagging injuries.
Right.
How much longer does he have?
And they're talking extensions with him right now, and he's old and often injured.
Yeah, I mean, like you got to assume this coming year that the Reds are going to come up the rear in the division again. The Brewers, you got to see them probably improving from last year because they were pretty bad record wise. Pirates have to be better than last year, right? At least a little bit.
They have too many talented players to be that bad.
I mean, I probably see them a few games over 500, but at best, do the Cardinals at best finish where they did last year?
That's kind of what I see right now because
I mean that's. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say the Cardinals, they're gonna push out those. How the heck did you win? You totally should not have win those games. That's what they do. They always do that. But yeah, I mean, to your point, that's pretty much how I see them.
Yeah. So if the best case scenario is the Cardinals finish where they did last year, is the Cubs won the division by 17 and a half games. So even if they win 6 games, 7 games less than they did last year, they're still winning this division by double-digit games.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if everything goes right for the Cubs and these other teams kind of do as predicted, the Cubs really should have no problem winning this division. Now, of course, it's baseball. Anything could happen. Watch, the Cardinals can somehow have this amazing comeback season. I mean, we've seen what the Cardinals can do, but we've also seen the Cardinals do that with a lot more on their team. Because when you really think about it, yeah, Steven Piscotty's a pretty solid young hitter. Elsmanis Diaz is a pretty good solid young hitter. And Johnny Peralta's getting old and whatnot. They don't have that feared power hitter in the middle of the lineup like an in-prime Yachty was, an in-prime Albert Pujols, or an in-prime Matt Holliday. They just don't have that kind of player right now.
Yeah, and I'm quickly looking at the Cubs roster is left-handers. They've got Brett Anderson.
Oh, that's right.
Brian Dunsing.
Yeah.
Jack Leathersich. Lester's a starter. Montgomery's a starter. Caleb Smith and Rob Zastryzny. Those are their lefties.
How did I forget him? How did I forget? Shame on me for getting Zastryzny. Dunsing, I don't know if he'll make the team or not. We'll see what happens in spring. Brett Anderson, for some reason I pictured him as a righty, but he is a lefty. That's right. But yeah, I mean, Travis Wood was a proven loogie. So, I like what I saw from Big Z last year. So hopefully we'll keep seeing that.
And that's the only thing I can think of is they were high on him and didn't want to pay somebody and put him in a spot where they're gonna hold up a younger, cheaper guy.
Right. Now, here's the thing: if Zastryzny works out, and let's say Montgomery's in the bullpen for a while, and Brett Anderson, maybe he stays healthy. If they do what they can do, and the righties do what they can do, the Cubs will probably have a better bullpen than last year. And, I'll say this. I think Wade Davis, skill-wise, is better than Aroldis Chapman. Aroldis Chapman is good because he throws faster than Sonic the Hedgehog. I mean, Wade Davis has sick movements and really good command with his pitches when healthy. So, I think right now, on paper, the Cubs' bullpen is looking pretty good overall. Yeah, you would like more veteran lefty depth, but the back end guys, your closer, your setup guys are looking pretty good right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think your bullpen's going to be more steady than it was last year.
Right.
I like some of the things the bullpen did last year, but they were shaky at times. I mean, it's just going to be staying healthy.
Right. That's one thing you always worry about because, Wade Davis has had recent injury problems. Koji Urihara is like over 40 years old. Hector Rondon and Pedro Strop had injuries last year that did affect them. So, yeah, you definitely want those guys to stay healthy. And you have Brett Anderson, who's been the definition of an injury bug right there.
Yeah, Koji Urihara is the only player on the 40-man roster who is older than I am.
That's hilarious.
That makes me give hope that maybe I can make the roster this next season.
And here I am, at my age of 22, how there's several guys my age or just slightly older than me who are making millions and are world champions. I mean, Addison Russell is my age, and he hit a grand slam in the World Series. I mean, really.
Yeah. So what else do we have? I mean, I guess the last thing we have to talk about is a little bit of the NFL draft. Is there wasn't any Bears news really this week.
No, none.
But if you're new to the show or haven't listened in a few weeks, is between pretty much the Super Bowl and the NFL draft is every week we cover one position in the upcoming NFL draft and sort of spotlight a few guys. I don't do more just because it's time consuming. What I do is I take actual game film and watch every single snap that the player is involved in and over multiple games. And so it's just a little time consuming. So I just pick a few guys. But if there's players that you guys want to see, absolutely let me know, because I've got a running list of these players, and I can go ahead and look at them. This week is the defensive tackles, the defensive linemen. I kind of lumped them together as the defensive 3-4 defensive ends, defensive tackles. Basically anybody I broke them defensive linemen into edge rushers and interior defensive linemen. So this week is interior defensive linemen. Next week will be wide receivers. So defensive inline defensive linemen, I did 5 players just because I wasn't that enamored with this class. So I kind of just picked a handful of the top end guys. The first guy I wanted to talk about is Chris Wormley, 6'5", 297 out of Michigan. I had to spotlight a Michigan guy because I'm a big Michigan fan, but watching him play, the pros, he's got amazing hands. And with defensive linemen, is you use your hands to ward off offensive linemen. Is if those offensive linemen get into your body, it's really hard to get them off because they're sort of like glue. They've got you, and they can use the leverage. And if you use your hands to keep them away, is you can shed that block much easier. So he uses his hands really well. He uses them to keep the blockers off his body and help shed blockers very easily. He's a real fiery guy. He has some ability to rush the passer from an inside position. He's powerful enough to drive blockers backwards. And he's pretty athletic. Not fast, but athletic. So you can watch him do a lot of things athletically. The cons, his football IQ and his like field vision aren't where they should be for a top end player. Sometimes he gets lost where the ball went, and he'll tackle. So if there's a option or if there's a handoff and he doesn't see where the ball goes, his instincts always are in the wrong spot, and he tackles either if it's a fake, he tackles the would-be ball carrier. If it's a handoff, he's tackling the quarterback and the ball goes by. That's something he has to work on. So he gets lost. He loses the ball fairly frequently. This is a little nitpicky, but he's a pile-oner. So whenever there's a gang tackle and he'll come running and dive on top of the play. And I don't like that because that's a childish type thing that they don't call it really in college, but in the NFL, they're going to flag him for that. And you don't want to set your team back by doing stupid things like that. So it's one of those immaturity things that's a red flag for me. He's slow twitch off the snap. So when the ball is snapped, he's not responding that quickly. He's got a lag to get off the ball. The notes I have on him are, although he has the ability to shed blockers with his hands, he tends to engage them too long. So I don't know if he wants to drive players back and then shed them. He seems to engage in the blocks too long. I don't think he's explosive enough to be an edge rusher, a regular edge rusher in the NFL, like a consistent edge rusher. But he has enough moves to be able to go in there at times or in a rotation to play an edge rush. I think he would be really solid in the NFL as a 3-4 defensive end. That's kind of the position I see him at. I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
No, got nothing.
Next is Carlos Watkins, 6'4", 312 out of Clemson. And I just love talking about the size of these guys. It's like 6'5", 297. It's just a monster of a human being.
Significantly bigger than myself.
Carlos Watkins, he's got some nice leverage. He comes off the ball looking like a much shorter man just because of the leverage he has. Very powerful lower body, nice ability to bull rush, some good athleticism and pursuit. When he's fresh, he's got a really nice motor. And he's got the nice ability to move laterally quickly down the line. So in pursuit, the cons on him is he really doesn't have a discernible pass rush moves other than the bull rush and just hustle plays. And he's a little bit of a defensive lineman tweener. He's not the right size for any of the niche positions on the defensive line, which kind of leads me to believe he's going to end up being a rotational guy rather than a starter. And he gets fatigued very quickly. And if he doesn't work on that now that he's in his early 20s, by the time he's in his late 20s, it's going to get worse. So he gets quickly fatigued, and when he's tired, he's a low motor guy. He played quite a bit of edge in Clemson, but he's definitely not going to be an edge guy in the NFL. I'm not sure where he's going to fit on the defensive line. It's going to depend on which team drafts him and what scheme they play. But he's likely going to need to be a rotational guy, especially if he doesn't improve his conditioning.
Yeah, it says here that projected round is between 3 and 4, so I don't know if that's high enough for you or too low or whatnot.
I mean, based on these defensive linemen in this draft, there's a couple of top-end guys, there's a couple of mid-round guys, and then there's just some bottom-end guys. There's not a lot of depth at this draft.
Right.
So I would say 3 to 4 is probably pretty fair for him because if you can get him in good conditioning, I mean he did cause some disruptions. It's not like he's a bad player. It just there's enough questions about him that sort of drops him down.
Sure, that makes sense.
Next is Caleb Brantley, 6'2", 297 out of Florida. He has pros on him. He has several pro-style moves off the ball. So he's got some NFL-style pass rush moves, which was pretty impressive. You don't see that very often coming out of college. He's quick. He's powerful off the ball. But the cons on him are whenever he thinks he's out of a play, he just gives up. He stops running. And that's bad. You can't do that. He's got a really awkward stance. 3-point stance is not that awkward, but when he gets down on a 4-point stance, it's like a weird, I don't know, it's like a weird stance. It's not typical. I don't even know how to describe it. And he doesn't disengage from blocks very well. So when somebody gets a block on him, he's not shedding it. It's watching him. The first game I watched of him was the Florida versus Florida State game. And I was like, I have never seen a player get off the snap and disrupt things like so well as he did, and not actually make a play. So he was bursting through the line, and they would end up just going the opposite direction or filling his hole with the run play after he overran it. So he was actually being disruptive, but it wasn't having an impact on the offensive play. And it was weird. You don't see that very often. Maybe once or twice in a game, but not so consistently. And I was like, man, I sort of like this guy based on this Florida State game. And then I watched the Alabama game, and Caleb Brantley looked like hot garbage. He just got manhandled by the Alabama offensive line. I mean, it looked like if I was playing there, just getting slapped around. So for me, I'm not drafting him before the mid fourth round, just because if you can't do anything against a college offensive lineman, what are you going to do against an NFL offensive lineman? Even if it's a good college offensive lineman, what are you going to do against an NFL offensive lineman?
This one here says first round, but it seems like by the red flags you've said that it would make more sense to be later.
Yeah, and I mean, you know what? And it's beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Like I said, if you watch certain games of him, like he's just an animal disrupting, busting through the offensive line. But there was just a few red flags for me that scare me about him, that I'm not going to draft him that high if I'm a GM.
Sure.
But then there's the two guys that I'm in love with. The first is Malik McDowell, 6'5", 276 out of Michigan State. This guy is long and athletic, and when he plays with good footwork, he looks amazing. Works really well within stunts, moves down the line laterally, and evades blockers while he looks for a pass rush hole. He's very strong. The cons I had about him is I think he was completely misused by Michigan State. He's got poor fundamentals, and he can be pretty lazy. But, Michigan State had him playing nose tackle. They had him playing D tackle. They had him playing edge rusher. They had him everywhere along the defensive line, a little bit like a certain first-round draft pick by the Bears last year. The notes I had on him, if he decides he wants to be a player in this league, I think he could be absolutely dominant. It's probably going to take him at least a half a season for him to start figuring out the speed of the game and how the NFL works. But once that light bulb goes on, I think Malik McDowell is going to be a pretty good football player in this league. And I would be shocked if he doesn't go in the first round.
Yeah, that's kind of what they're saying here, so nothing big to add.
And then last but certainly not least is Jonathan Allen, out of 6'3", 291 out of Alabama. This guy is about as polished of a defensive lineman as you're going to see coming in the draft. He's very well groomed, the product of hard work and good coaching. He has enough NFL style pass rush moves to play edge in the NFL. He's powerful and quick enough to play inside, and he was coached very well. The cons I have on him are he lacks ideal size for a defensive lineman in the NFL, and that could be the ultimate limiter for him. The notes I have are Jonathan Allen is a very safe pick, no matter where you pick him. If you pick him first, fifth, sixth, anywhere you pick him, he's a safe pick. He has a very, very high floor. So you know that he's not going to be a bust. At best, he is a solid defensive lineman. At worst, he's a solid defensive lineman. But I'm just not sure how high his ceiling is. I saw a lot of him prior to this, but when I actually sat down to scout him, I'm a little unsure of just how high his ceiling is. If he's a Chicago Bear, and that's the guy they decide to go on. I think he's a day one starter. He goes next to Eddie Goldman and opposite of Akeem Hicks, and he definitely makes that line better. But after watching him play more, if I'm remocking the Bears first round, I'm probably not going to take Jonathan Allen. I'm probably going to take Solomon Thomas, who's an edge rusher out of Stanford. I think you get a little more bang for your buck with him, but if they pick Jonathan Allen there, it is not a bad pick. He's a very, very safe pick.
Yeah, a lot of mock drafts I've seen, they all have Allen going to the Bears. So, we'll see what happens, and if he's the best player available, I could really see the Bears taking him because it seems like that's what their approach is. And, obviously they value defense, so, that's it. I could see it happening.
Yeah, I mean, he's from everything I read, he's a good kid. He's a good student of the game and a good teammate. All of those things will get factored in. And just like I said, he's a guy that has the floor on him is very high. So you're not going to swing and miss. He's like a guy that at worst you get a double, but you're not sure if you're going to get a home run. That's right. I'm just not sure of his ceiling just because of the size limitations. He's a little too big and slow to be an edge rusher, but I don't know if he has the size to withstand the wear of being against the double teams in the NFL. That's my concern. But he's definitely going to be a solid player in this league.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense.
So that's really all I did for the defensive tackles. So if anybody out there wants a player looked at, if it's a position that we're going to do later on in the coming weeks, we'll just throw it on the list of guys to do later. If it's a position we've already done, I'll go back and look at them and then talk about it the next episode. But like I said, next week was wide receivers, and then we'll go forward. We still haven't done safeties and quarterbacks. Those will be the last 2 weeks before the draft. And I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about, Alex.
And nothing on my mind, really. Next week we'll finally start spring training games. So, yeah, that's that pretty slow week, to say the least.
Absolutely, very slow week. But it was nice. It was relaxing to kind of catch up and, gear back up for hockey to start.
And for spring training and hockey. You see the guys coming together in spring training. And, it's good to see hockey back at the United Center again. It really, really is. And
it was funny because spring training, I usually, I get geeked up about pitchers and catchers reporting, and then it's sort of like a lull because it's usually in Chicago, it's still really cold, and you're like, I don't know if I can get into the baseball swing of things yet because I'm still wearing gloves and a winter coat and a winter hat, and there's snow on the ground.
Not right now.
But right now, if we have several people that listen that are from far off places or that are just Chicago fans. Right now, it's was it almost 70 degrees today?
Yes, it was. I was with some friends today. We went out walking outside for a bit, and then we played some baseball in the park. So, in mid-February.
Yeah, I saw people in shorts. It is February in Chicago. What was it, 3 years ago that we had the polar vortex where right around this time it was 50 below zero?
Yep. And then a few years before that was the Great Blizzard of 2011.
Yeah. So usually February is probably the worst. I mean, if you're not from Chicago, usually February is probably the worst month for winter.
Sure. Yeah.
It's
January, February. Yep.
Yeah. It's usually when that groundhog is 6 more weeks of winter. Everybody's just wait, 6 more weeks? It goes on past this? Yep. And then it starts getting worse. We are. It's in the mid to upper 60s, and it's going to be for the next couple days. So it makes
enjoy every moment.
Real. Yeah, it makes baseball feel that much more real.
Absolutely, and we've never gone to spring training with this relaxed of a feeling, knowing we don't have to worry about this. What if it's the year? What if it's we're the world champs? We're going in as the world champs. It feels so relaxing. It feels great. Just enjoy every minute of it.
Yeah, and one of these days I'm going to finally make it out to spring training.
I've been there once.
And I'm hoping, knock on wood, I'm hoping to go to the induction ceremony at Cooperstown this year.
Cooperstown, New York is great.
Yeah, my wife and I went before we got married. She spent almost a decade living in upstate New York.
Sure.
And we went on a road trip of like places where she lived, and we went camping and like visiting some of her friends, and we ended up going to Cooperstown because I'd never been. I'd been to the NFL Hall of Fame, but I had never been to Baseball Hall of Fame. And so we went, and I was like, I think I could. The very first thing that stuck out to me, where like I got a little misty-eyed and nostalgic, was this. This is how you know I'm a Cub nerd. I saw the actual Shawnometer.
Yes.
I was like,
so funny.
I had to explain it to my wife, and she's like, I got in the Hall of Fame. And I was like, it's the Shawnometer. It's the Shawnometer.
Shawnometer. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and then when you finally get into the hall where the actual plaques are, and just like you're like, oh my God, there's Andre Dawson, and there's Ryan Sandberg and Cal Ripken, and it's funny, as big of a Cub fan as I am, my all-time favorite player, and I can't even begin to tell you why, is Cal Ripken.
The Iron Man, sure.
Yeah, so it's like Cal Ripken, and then after that, it's like probably a four-way tie with Greg Maddox, Ryan Sandberg, Andre Dawson, and Mark Grace.
Yeah. Yeah, and you think about it, you think about those Hall of Famers, and you think, wow, most of these guys have walked through these halls and have been here. And you look at all the memorabilia. You think that was worn at a game I remember. That was worn in game footage I've seen, and I'm actually physically looking at it.
Yeah, and it's like, some of the guys who were like bigger than life when I was a kid, like Ricky Henderson and Dave Winfield and Reggie Jackson, and you're just like, oh my God, there's like, they wore this. They were there. It's just crazy.
Yeah, the cap from the 20 strikeout game for Kerry Wood is there, so that was kind of cool to see.
Yeah, and have you ever been to the Football Hall of Fame in Ohio?
I don't believe so. We've gone to a couple of like places like that when I was really little. We went to the Hockey Hall of Fame when I was little, and I somewhat remember that. Went to Cooperstown in 2014. We went to Ohio when I was really, really little, so we might have stopped by there, but I honestly wouldn't remember it if I was there.
It's neat, but it's small. Like when you get there, you're like, wow, this is actually really small. Where Cooperstown was big, and there's like the whole town was like all baseball-y stuff.
I love that town. It's great.
Yeah, that town was like Americana. It was like, let's get ice cream and then go see baseball, and it's just very Americana. Where like Canton is like the Football Hall of Fame is nice, but it's just much more small.
Right.
And just the history of football is not as deep. It's not the same as baseball. It's not as old. It's not as football, the history is not as important as in baseball. But I mean, the thing I liked better about the NFL Hall of Fame than baseball, the one thing that made it better was it was so chock full of Chicago Bears stuff because they're such an old franchise and they're so important.
Yeah, it goes back almost 100 years. Yeah.
And putting my hand next to the Fridge's Super Bowl ring, and you're like, I could get all four of my fingers into this at the same time.
Isn't that hilarious? Like comparing yourself to one of those greats and just how monstrous they were.
Yeah. So it's fun. And, I would like to go to the Hockey Hall of Fame. I've just never done it. And probably the basketball one just out of completeness sake. But I don't think anything's going to hold a candle to Cooperstown. There's so much history there, and baseball is such a like. Just the Shawnometer. That was a fan bringing that to the game, and that just became part of the Hall of Fame. And no other sport is going to be able to have that sort of thing. Partly just because of the way the season is set up, where the NFL is only 16 games and baseball is 162 games, and there's just so much more room for that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
But you feel much more part of it. Like you feel when you step in there that there's just so much there that they couldn't even put it all on display.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why trips to Cooperstown to experience the full, aura of the Baseball Hall of Fame, you can't do it in just one day. You got to be there for multiple days if you want to experience all of it.
Yeah. But I think that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank you guys so much for listening. If you want to check us out on Twitter, at ShyFanPat1 or at Swerski Sports. Twitter or Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. Thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like Denver New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears! Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.